So today we're going to show you 4 Legend 10 prototypes that you won't have seen before. And I know, what's up with the vertical format? Well, initially we shot this video on the phone as a short, but Chris Jury, who's the Senior Design Director at Nike Football, said so many good things that we decided to give you the whole video instead. So let's jump into it.
We started here. With the upper, we started to looking at what we can do with the Flytouch. And the team got really excited about exploring the textures. We started with this really interesting dimple texture to start to speak to cushioning. Also, what we looked at was how we can take the Flyknit color and look at a different structure here to really amplify the idea of cushioning. You'll see this dimple pattern coming through in the Flyknit. And then also what we did with the cushioning in the heel area as well. We moved that on. These were actually done at the similar time, maybe 2 weeks separated. What we learned from the Vamp here was that it was like pretty good in terms of cushioning. But what we wanted to do is start to build a much more technical story on the ball touch area, especially on the medial side. So you see some of those big dots we spoke to about cushioning and dampening of the material, but we started to make those a lot smaller on the medial side, so they started to look a bit more technical. We carried that through onto the next prototype here, where this was really looking a bit more at how small can we really get those dots to speak to the boot to ball. And what was interesting on here was looking at some of the graphical shapes with these skin pieces and the branding. This is when we start to really see the identity come to life, not only with the material, but what else we could do through the color blocking and material packages on Tiempo 10. And that's something we're actually really excited about with the journey of Tiempo, is what we can really do with the material finishes and the color. So this was a pretty important prototype, not only from the materials, but looking at what we could do with some of more of those pattern pieces to start to look at these details. After that, through testing, we started just to look at other texture patterns. We'd moved from the dimpling, the micro dimpling, onto this more gridded look, which we may see come back at some point. More so it was done from just a visual exercise. What was actually interesting here, again with the Flytouch, we learned a lot about that we can take the material and give different finishes and effects to it without harming the characteristics. And that's something we're super excited again about with Tiempo 10, is that we can change the visual look quite easily without changing the characteristics of the product. Another interesting one on here, we started to looking at the detailing of the lining. One of the important aspects of Tiempo 10, along with the Flytouch material, is this idea of comfort. And the way we approached comfort wasn't something that was just super soft underfoot, but the idea of zero distraction. So we wanted to make sure that the whole interior package really fit and felt like almost like a slipper on the foot. We want to give the athletes and the player experience comfort, but through the lens of zero distraction. We feel it's really important that we can actually create a really nice plush interior, but that's not helpful if you have lace pressure, etc. So we wanted to have the idea of zero distraction with the product. So we moved on to this version here. We looked back at the dot patterns, and you really start to see some of the placements come to life. The unfortunate thing on this prototype, visually it looks really interesting, but we found, again through testing, that the more we overwork the material, the stiffer it gets. So we actually went then on not a drastic change, but went back and looking at our past of past Tiempos, and really started to look at this idea of quilting, especially the ribs and the stitch details you see on some of the older Tiempos, which was more from the limitations of K-leather, really, more of having to reinforce the K-leather to stop overstretching. One of the interesting things, or the most breakthrough things with Flytouch, is that because of the synthetic material, we have a much more stable material. We have a lot lighter material also than K-leather. But what's really cool is the exploration now we can do with color and some of the material finishes. So From a construction-wise, going to the ribs give us a bit more of, still maintaining the characteristics of the Flytouch and the dampening without making the material too stiff. We also create a little bit of a natural fold and drape on the material, just allowing some of those contours to move with the foot a little bit. And then, yeah, seeing that come together with some of this micro dot detailing just to enhance the boot to ball experience. But you said as we went back and looked at some of the older ones, we still wanted to maintain those graphical elements of the secondary material in the heel. So yeah, how we ended up with the texture pattern on the Flytouch. So
yeah, I bet you enjoyed that. I did at least. But what are your thoughts on the Legend 10 prototypes, and what do you think of Nike's whole prototyping process? Well, as always, let us know below. Remember that you can buy the actual final version of the Legend 10 in the link on the screen, and also don't forget to subscribe with the notifications on. And with those words, I'll be signing off. Cheerio.